So it seems that the content of the new Aeldari box has leaked onto the internet, with confirmed pictures circulating of just what's in the new Combat Patrol. Let's talk through the box set, the new rules for the units in Codex Aeldari, and whether or not it's overall looking like a good deal and better than the last one or not. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where it's been a busy day for the Aeldari in the last few days. First Games Workshop Codex previews, then a whole bunch of rules leaks have hit the internet. Hopefully I won't be too much longer on the Codex review, though it is probably going to be tomorrow at this point, but I thought it was worth stopping off along the way to talk about the contents of their new box set. In the Aeldari release, as we know, this weekend sees the release of the new Codex, 4 Phoenix Lords and 3 Aspect Warriors, and a couple of reboxes and dice and data cards. As well as there being a bit of disappointment at no Battle Force box set, the other thing that was kind of notably missing was their Combat Patrol. It seems that Games Workshop might deliberately choose to keep Combat Patrols back if they have the new units in them, and it looks like given that the new one has some Warp Spiders in, they've decided to delay the release a little. The Blood Angels had this happen for their Sanguinary Guard, but the Combat Patrol box didn't really follow too long behind the rest, so bear that in mind if you do want to get some Warp Spiders. I think that this box set could be useful to you. It might not be all that long behind the main release, maybe something like 2 to 4 weeks. If you are looking to pick up any of the releases at the weekend though, feel free to check out the discount retailers linked down in the video description. They can save anywhere between 10 and 20% depending on where you are in the world, and those specific links help out Warspets Tactics and keep all the videos coming. Here are the pre-order times for all the Fancy's Phoenix Lords and Aspect Warriors. They'll be going live between Friday night and Saturday morning, and in any case a massive thank you to anyone supporting the channel this way. Talking Combat Patrols though, this is the previous Combat Patrol Aeldari. As Warhammer 40k Combat Patrols go, it was rated as one of the better ones by quite a few people. This one had a Farseer and some Guardians, a Wraith Lord and 2 sets of Wind Rider jet bikes. The discount on buying the kits together was something like around 40%ish, and currently I believe the points cost in the box will be 485 points, again at least fairly good on that metric compared with many. In general this one's already gone though unfortunately. You might be able to find a few copies of it in local discount retailers from place to place, but Games Workshop haven't been selling it on their web store for a good month or so at this point. It seems that in the Codex they've given away the contents of the new one that's coming though. In the Codexes they have some nice pictures of the new Combat Patrols, though they usually tend to announce them ahead of time before they drop. In the rules this one's going to be called Kaigaril's Protectors, and contained in the box is a Spirit Seer, a unit of Wraith Guard or Wraith Blades, 2 squads of Dire Avengers, and then 1 unit of Warp Spiders. Basically rather than being a more centrally Guardian themed box like the last one, this one is Aspect and Wraith themed. Going through the contents and their new rules, the Dire Avengers are $45, £28 or €35, tending to be the most common Aspect Warriors to take to the field, kind of like Guardians but better with their boosted Shuriken catapults, very much being the battle line of Calum and Chicane. The kit is quite an old one at this point, the first Eldar Aspect Warriors to be converted to plastic, and while I think their appearance holds up pretty great to modern standards, they do have a whole bunch of mould lines, and their torsos and legs don't fit hugely well together. It does at least mean that when bought individually they're cheaper than most of the Aspects, almost $20 cheaper than the more recent ones they've released. In game they're fairly fragile but spam a massive amount of Shuriken catapult shots. Just about every Aeldari unit got some big rules rewrites in the Codex. These guys got 4 shots on those Shuriken catapults rather than 2, get them out to 18 inches but they've lost lethal hits, and instead of their boosted Overwatch thing they now get Blade Storm, getting sustained hits 1 when targeting an enemy within half range, so I guess 9 inches there. The Exarch can also take an extra Shuriken catapult as well if he doesn't want a fancy sword, so I guess that could be potentially 44 shots per unit or with sustained hits, and they get one of those Aspect Shrine tokens that allows you to change an unmodified hit or wound roll to a 6, though I guess not really the biggest single impact on these. It does look like they can be made up to be very scary with lethal and sustained hits in that Aspect Warrior formation, and they are a central unit for the Guardian Battle Host too. Azamon is looking rather excellent as well with his anti-infantry shots. Going from an older Aspect to a much newer one, we've got the Warp Spiders. These will be much more expensive at $62.50, £40 or €51, and these are Games Workshop's update on what were until recently the oldest models in Warhammer 40k still on sale. They're a teleporting Aspect, braving the horrors of the warp to destroy the foe. Even briefly touching the warp is kind of perilous for an Aeldari, given Slaanesh wanting to devour all their souls, but it does mean that they can pop out of nowhere and shred the enemy with a bunch of monofilaments. I feel like they did well with the new models, basically keeping the same feel and vibe, but just looking a bit sharper, and I've got a bunch more Exarch gear, including the option to get a massive amount of power blade attacks, or doubling down on the range shooting. In game they've got a whole bunch of options. The regular Death Spinners are Torrent Ignores cover weapons with AP 1 now and don't have devastating wounds, but that's still going to make a nasty mess of most light infantry, and just about every combination of the Exarch's weapons is pretty interesting. a big 10 twin linked attacks with AP2 in melee if you want, or going full range with a spinneret rifle and some Death Weavers if you want basically 2 extra boosted death spinner profiles in the unit. Their flicker jump moves them 24 inches, so it can basically guarantee that they hit the enemy before they get hit, and it has meant that they've got a high points cost in the past. That's a little bit more perilous than it was before though, as you have to roll 1d6 for each model in the squad, and for each one that you roll you get a mortal wound. It's not just 1 dice per unit anymore. It seems that the Warp Spiders might be a particularly interesting choice given the advent of Lycus, the new character Phoenix Lord model, and has some cool rules. Next up we have the Wraith Guard. Ghost Warriors reawaken from the Infinity Circuits to defend the living in some sturdy Wraithbone constructs. Massive damage with distort weapons, though can be slow and ponderous, needing some Psychers to guide their Wraith sight in the general direction of the enemy. Again, these ones are a slightly older kit as they go, though I think also hold up well. In the Codex they've had a few changes, in general maybe looking at a little bit less powerful rules wise, but that could easily come with a slightly decreased points cost. They've dropped down to toughness 6, though are still very sturdy with a 2+ save. They do quite want Psychers nearby, as that gives them +1 to hit if there's one within 12 inches, and also makes their leadership 6 rather than 8, and otherwise the Wraith Cannon and D-Scythe got some changes. The D-Scythe auto hits, but is only strength 7 AP 3 now, and the Wraith Cannon loses devastating wounds, but is even punchier at damage D6 +1. Their special rule has changed though, and they can only fall back and shoot now. They can't do a massive volley of damage in the enemy turn. These guys can also be built as the close combat variant as well in the Wraith Blades. They can be tankier with a 4+ invulnerable save, though their blade attack definitely got a fair bit more interesting. They now get 5 attacks at strength 5 AP 2 damage 2, so it might just be a little bit more tempting. I bear in mind that both of these units can only be fielded in max squads of 5 now as well. They've lost the 10 strong option. Finally for the box set we've got the Spirits here, which is $35 or £20, a specialist Eldar Psyker to shepherd the Wraith constructs to their foes, aiding them in their fights and healing some damaged Wraithbone along the way. Again, as with just about everything, the rules have changed in a massive way. The Spirits here sort of now being an Aeldari Tech Marine pretty much, gaining Lone Operative when they're within 3 inches of a Wraith unit, and they've now got a couple of different buffs. Their damage buff is a little bit more clunky. They have to be able to see an enemy unit and then one Wraith construct within 6 inches gets to have sustained hits against that target, though the healing ability is still pretty nice, being able to just restore a model to the unit for one Wraith construct unit within 6 inches, or heal them for D3. Still looks pretty solid, and looks like there'll certainly be a central unit in that Spirit Host style detachment. That might just be a tiny bit clunky trying to keep up with infantry models that might be going off charging and things. In any case, putting those units together, I thought it would be interesting to weigh up the box set in terms of points and money in it. If the points stay at least somewhat similar to what they were pre-Codex, the Spirits here would be 65 points, the Wraith Guard and Blades are around about 170 depending on which variant you go for. They could drop a little bit I guess with some profile nerfs. The Dire Avengers are currently 70 each, and the Warp Spiders will be 125. Seems unlikely that they'll be dropping down given the influx of new Exarch gear. Overall though, putting that all together and its fairly solid numbers in the box, maybe around about 500 points, which honestly compared with the vast majority of 10th edition Combat Patrols really isn't too bad. There's a few of them that are all the way down at around 300 points or less, like the new Guard one and the Admech one, and Aeldari definitely felt like an army that might have been at that kind of level if Games Workshop had chosen different kits here. The previous one's currently 485 points, so might be actually a Combat Patrol that actually holds steady on that metric, as opposed to getting fewer points in the box. It works out at 3 points per dollar, which I think is generally quite good for Warhammer 40k in general. Otherwise, discount-wise, the pricing of this one will most likely be £100, $168 and €130 like all the rest of the Combat Patrols, and putting those prices from earlier together, it looks like if you bought those exact kits separately, they'd be around $250, so that's roughly a 33% discount, at least compared with that if you did want these exact units. This one isn't quite as good as the previous one, the one with the Wind Riders and the Wraith Lord. That was around 40%, though as it goes it's really not too bad compared with the other 10th edition Combat Patrol box sets, which have maybe tended to average somewhere between 25 to 35%. Overall for this one, I'd say at first impressions it seems alright as 10th edition Combat Patrols go. I wouldn't say it's one of the more spectacular ones like say Adeptus Custodes, but it doesn't feel like one of the ones that's just actively bad. It kind of depends whether or not you really wanted the units or the themes of them, maybe versus the more central Combat Patrol that we had for the last one. There are a couple of older kits in the box, though there were in the last one I suppose, and that's part of the reason why it holds up by the metrics, given that Dire Avengers are a bit cheaper than the modern release aspects, and same for the Wraith Guard. It means that you maybe get a few more points and elite Aeldari infantry models in the box than you might do otherwise. Where this one's been discussed on the internet, I feel like reaction is mixed. I still personally probably rate the other one a bit better still, though I don't think this one's really all that far behind. and it maybe depends on whether or not you like the aesthetics of the units, and perhaps whether or not you've already got a whole bunch of Dire Avengers if you're a current Aeldari collector, which I'm sure a lot of people would have done already. In general, for the unit choice, both the Wraiths, the Warp Spiders and the Dire Avengers have often been really central units for the Aeldari over the years. There's been at least a good few times that Wraiths and Dire Avengers have been some of the best damage combos, and Warp Spiders almost always seem to have their movement tricks be super relevant. Perhaps the Spirits here is a little bit more niche and not quite so consistently good, and I'd say maybe for a criticism, I do feel like if you just wanted to start a central Aeldari army, then maybe getting Guardians and a Farseer in the first box wouldn't be the worst, just given that they tend to be a bit more general purpose ones as opposed to if you're going heavy into the Aspects or the Wraith host. Given the units though, you could run it as a more general one or run it as one of those detachments. Finally, I'd say it's probably not going to be the sort of box that most people look at buying twice. I think you could do if you want to, but then you'd really have to decide whether or not you want 20 Dire Avengers on the go. Perhaps if they do wind up being a really central damage dealer unit, and you wanted to run Guardian Battle Host or Aspect Host, then it might be worth it. I guess you could potentially use the bonus Spirits here as a Warlock or something if you wanted some variety as well. In general though, I wouldn't imagine too many people will be looking to get more than one of this. It does feel like it pairs okay with the previous one as well if you happen to pick one up when it was around. In any case, I look forward to hearing your thoughts as to the new shiny Combat Patrol box. Would you be tempted to pick one up when it hits the shelves or not? And how would you rate it versus the old one? Is this one or the old one the better box set? As mentioned earlier, if you were looking to pick up some shiny Aeldari things, when they go live this weekend, feel free to check out these stores linked in the video description. Here are the times when they go live. It's midnight for Wargame Portal and Fenris Workshop in the USA and Canada. That's Friday to Saturday. 10 AM in the UK for Element Games. 11 AM for Taschengeld for Germany and the EU. And midday Australian Eastern Time for Gap Games. A big thank you to anyone picking them up through those. It does help keep the videos coming. In any case though, I'll leave this one there for now. Hopefully it won't be too much longer before I get the Codex review done. Probably going to be another good 12 hours at least though. Looking forward to talking through all the new detachments in full. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more like this, and check out the Patreon page if you want to support the channel a bit more directly. That'll all be links down in the video description. But in any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.